Welcome to Screen Hollywood, the home of movie news and entertainment. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
I found myself sitting forward in my chair because this didn't feel like a superhero movie at all. It felt uneasy. The lighting was darker. The music was haunting. Reeves was producing this film immediately changed my expectations. And a bonus is that Mike Flanagan had written the screenplay, the maker of The Haunting of Hill House and Black Mass. He's not simply a villain, he's a tragedy. Looked darker, more emotional, more unsettling, because the greatest villains aren't frightening because they're powerful. They're frightening because you understand how they became what they are. If you'd asked me a year ago, what DC movie are you least excited about? The answer would have been easy. Clayface. Not Batman, not Superman, not Supergirl. Clayface. And honestly, I probably would have laughed, because like many casual DC fans, I didn't really know much about the character. In my head, Clayface was just a monster. Some giant clay creature that Batman occasionally punched in the face. So when Warner Brothers announced they were making an entire movie centered around him, my first reaction was, why? Out of every DC character they could have chosen, out of Green Arrow, Deathstroke, the Court of Owls, Nightwing, Lobo, even a Mr. Freeze origin story, they chose Clayface? It genuinely made no sense to me. And then there was something else. At the time, I assumed this was another James Gunn project. Now, those of you who followed this channel already know I've never been the biggest James Gunn fan. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the Guardians of the Galaxy films. They're funny, they've got heart, they're brilliantly cast. But outside of Guardians, his style simply isn't for me. It's quirky, it's colorful, it's packed with jokes. And sometimes, I think that humor completely undercuts dramatic moments. So naturally, when I heard Clayface and DCU, I immediately assumed we were getting another colorful superhero adventure with the occasional emotional speech thrown in. I couldn't have been more wrong. Let's be honest, the new DC universe hasn't exactly had the dream start Warner Brothers would have hoped for. When James Gunn took over, the expectation was enormous. This wasn't simply another reboot. This was supposed to be DC's fresh beginning, their answer to Marvel, the moment everything finally came together. Instead, it's felt like one uphill battle after another. Across the entertainment industry, the media, and even among DC fans themselves, there's been constant debate surrounding the direction of the new universe. Last year's Superman reboot generated plenty of discussion about whether it truly delivered the launch the DCU needed, with many analysts and commentators describing its box office performance as an underperformance against the enormous expectations surrounding the franchise. Then came Supergirl. Again, industry discussion has questioned whether it managed to capture audiences in the way Warner Brothers had hoped, with reports and commentary suggesting it struggled to generate the level of excitement expected from one of DC's most recognizable heroes. Whether you agree with those opinions or not, one thing is difficult to argue against. The conversation surrounding the DCU has become increasingly negative. Every release seems to arrive carrying the weight of the entire franchise on its shoulders. Every box office weekend becomes another debate. Every trailer becomes another argument. And when that starts happening, audiences begin losing confidence. That's arguably more damaging than one disappointing film. A few months ago, the very first teaser for Clayface landed online. I clicked on it, mostly out of curiosity. I wasn't expecting much. In fact, I was expecting exactly what I'd imagined months earlier. Something loud, something CGI heavy, something that felt like another standard superhero film. Instead, within about 30 seconds, I found myself sitting forward in my chair, because this didn't feel like a superhero movie at all. It felt uneasy. The lighting was darker. The music was haunting. The cinematography immediately reminded me more of a psychological thriller than a comic book blockbuster. There was tension, mystery, an atmosphere that felt genuinely unsettling. For the first time, I found myself thinking, hang on, what exactly is this movie? Because whatever it was, it certainly wasn't what I'd expected. After watching the teaser, I started digging into the production, and that's when everything suddenly clicked. Matt Reeves. Now, before anyone jumps into the comments, yes, James Gunn is overseeing the wider DC universe. But learning that Matt Reeves was producing this film immediately changed my expectations. And a bonus is that Mike Flanagan had written the screenplay, the maker of The Haunting of Hill House and Black Mass. With Matt Reeves, he understands something many superhero films seem to have forgotten: atmosphere. His version of the Batman wasn't simply another comic book movie. It was a detective thriller, a gothic crime story. It had patience, mood, rain-soaked streets, long silences, real tension. Then he followed it with The Penguin. Again, a mature crime drama, character-driven, grounded, adult. Neither project relied on constant jokes. Neither felt like they were desperately trying to appeal to absolutely everyone. Instead, they trusted the audience. And that's exactly what I started seeing inside this Clayface trailer. Not a film trying to sell toys, a film trying to tell a story. Now here's the funny part. After watching the teaser, I realized something. I actually knew far less about Clayface than I thought I did. Most casual fans picture one character, the giant mud monster. But the reality is, Clayface has existed in multiple forms throughout DC Comics. The most famous version is Basil Karlo. Originally, he wasn't a monster at all. He was an actor, a successful performer whose career slowly collapsed around him. Obsessed with reclaiming his former glory, he eventually became transformed into the shape-shifting creature we recognize today. And that's what makes Clayface so interesting. He's not simply a villain, he's a tragedy. At its core, this isn't really a story about a monster. It's a story about identity, about obsession, about losing yourself while desperately trying to become somebody else. When I realized that, everything suddenly made sense. This wasn't another superhero origin story. It was body horror, psychological horror, a character study. And honestly, that sounds infinitely more interesting than watching another beam shoot into the sky while superheroes punch each other through buildings. Then, the full trailer dropped, and whatever doubts I still had, most of them disappeared. Because this trailer doubled down on everything that impressed me about the teaser. It looked darker, more emotional, more unsettling. It wasn't trying to convince me this was the biggest superhero spectacle ever made. Instead, it looked like it wanted me to care about the man before he became the monster. And that's exactly the kind of storytelling DC needs right now. Watching this latest trailer, I kept waiting for the moment where it would suddenly become a typical comic book movie. You know the sort of thing. A huge CGI action sequence, explosions every 30 seconds, some cheesy one-liner, a hero standing on a rooftop looking into the distance while inspirational music swells in the background. But it never came. Instead, the trailer stayed remarkably restrained. Everything felt intimate, personal, almost uncomfortable. It looks like the filmmakers are far more interested in showing a man psychologically falling apart than they are showing a monster destroying half a city. And for me, that's exactly the right approach. Because the greatest villains aren't frightening because they're powerful. They're frightening because you understand how they became what they are. If this film can make us sympathize with Basil Karlo before he transforms into Clayface, then it's already doing something many superhero movies fail to do, making us emotionally invest in the villain. As I watched the trailer, one film kept popping into my head: Darkman, Sam Raimi's 1990 cult classic. Now, if you've never seen Darkman, go and watch it, seriously. Long before Spider-Man, Raimi gave us this wonderfully tragic story about a man whose entire identity is ripped away from him. It's dark. It's violent, it's emotional, and underneath all the action, it's really about loss. Watching Clayface, I got those same vibes, not because the stories are identical, but because they both seem interested in asking the same question. What happens when someone loses not only the life they once had, but their very identity? That's much more compelling than simply asking, who's stronger, or who wins the final fight? It's psychological. It's tragic. And judging by this trailer, that's exactly the direction Clayface seems to be heading. One thing really stood out to me: the confidence. This trailer doesn't feel like it's desperately trying to appeal to every single audience demographic. It doesn't scream, "Look at all our CGI!" It doesn't throw joke after joke at the viewer. Instead, it trusts the atmosphere. It trusts silence. It trusts performances. And perhaps most importantly, it trusts the audience. That might sound like a small thing, but I actually think it's become one of the biggest problems in modern superhero cinema. Too many studios seem terrified that audiences will become bored if there isn't a joke every 30 seconds, or a massive action scene every 5 minutes. Clayface doesn't appear interested in doing any of that. It seems perfectly happy allowing scenes to breathe, building suspense, creating dread, letting uncomfortable moments linger. That's filmmaking, not content production. And there's a huge difference. Here's the irony. I actually laughed to myself after finishing the trailer, because one thought immediately entered my head. Wouldn't it be absolutely ironic if Warner Brothers invested hundreds of millions of dollars trying to relaunch Superman, spent years trying to rebuild the DC universe, only for one of its least recognizable villains to become the movie everyone remembers? Now, before anyone starts typing angry comments, I'm not saying Clayface is guaranteed to outperform Superman or Supergirl financially. There are far too many variables to make predictions like that. But here's what I do think is entirely possible. Clayface could end up receiving stronger reviews. It could become the better film, because audiences forgive smaller-scale stories if they're well-written. They forgive unfamiliar characters if they're brilliantly acted. Nobody walked into Joker expecting a billion-dollar phenomenon. Nobody expected The Penguin to become one of television's biggest critical successes. People responded because those projects told compelling stories, not because they featured the biggest explosions. If Clayface delivers emotionally, people will talk. Word of mouth will spread. And that's something no marketing campaign can manufacture. Here's the reality. Whether you're a James Gunn supporter or a critic, the DC brand needs a genuine success story. Over the last few years, the conversation surrounding DC has often focused on uncertainty, leadership changes, creative changes, reboots, changing plans, questions about long-term direction. Meanwhile, when people discuss the strongest recent DC projects, the same names keep appearing: the Batman, the Penguin, and now, potentially, Clayface. Notice something? All three projects share the same DNA. They're darker, they're grounded, they're driven by character before spectacle. And all three are connected creatively to Matt Reeves' corner of Gotham. Are you beginning to see the pattern? Because I certainly am. It's almost as though audiences aren't asking for bigger superhero movies anymore. They're asking for better stories. This could be the DCU's dark horse. One thing I find fascinating, there hasn't actually been that much online discussion about Clayface. Compared to Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, or Avengers, it's been relatively quiet. And honestly, I think that's a good thing, because nobody is placing impossible expectations on this movie. It doesn't have to become the highest-grossing comic book film ever made. It doesn't have to carry an entire cinematic universe. It simply has to tell one great story. Sometimes, those are the films that surprise everyone, the films nobody expects, the films that quietly arrive, then suddenly become the movies everyone is talking about 2 weeks later. That's why I genuinely believe Clayface could become the dark horse of the year. Not because he's DC's most famous character, quite the opposite, because he's one of the least expected. If you'd asked me 12 months ago whether I'd be excited about a Clayface movie, I'd probably have said no. Actually, I definitely have said no. But credit where it deserves to be given. This marketing campaign has completely changed my opinion. The teaser caught my attention. The full trailer sold me. It looks mature. It looks atmospheric. It looks tragic. It looks genuinely unsettling. Most importantly, it looks different. And that's exactly what superhero cinema desperately needs right now. More risks, more originality, more filmmakers willing to tell stories that don't feel like they've been assembled inside a corporate boardroom. Will Clayface save the DC universe? No. One movie can't fix every problem. But could it remind audiences that DC is still capable of producing outstanding films? Absolutely. And if that happens, it might just become the most important DC release in years. Because sometimes, the biggest surprise isn't the movie everyone is talking about, it's the one nobody saw coming. So, what do you think? Has Clayface completely changed your expectations? Or are you still wondering why Warner Brothers chose such an obscure Batman villain in the first place? Do you think this could become the DCU's biggest surprise? Or do you believe it's simply too niche to make a real impact? I genuinely love to hear your thoughts, so let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to Screen Hollywood, and turn on notifications for more original movie reviews, trailer breakdowns, entertainment news, and opinion-led analysis that goes beyond the headlines. Also subscribe to our news site at screenhollywood.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.